Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. With the name of Almighty One God, who is most merciful and most beneficent. My friends, my name is Dr. Abu Abdullah and I am certified from 6 universities of the world. We are discussing the contributions of Muslims in the past medieval time, which is forgotten, which is nowhere. But still they are bases of modern science. So in this lecture, we will discuss the contribution of Muslims in biology. The Muslim scientists made considerable progress in biology, especially in botany, and developed horticulture to a high degree of perfection. They paid greater attention to botany in comparison to zoology. Botany reached its zenith in Spain. In zoology, the study of horse was developed almost to the tank of a science. Abu Ubaidah, 728 to 825 AD, who wrote more than 100 books, devoted more than 50 books to the study of horse. Al-Jahiz, who flourished in Basra, is reputed to be one of the greatest zoologists the Muslim world has produced. His influence in the subject may be traced to the Persian Al-Qazwini and the Egyptian Al-Damri. His book later, Theories of Evolution, Adaptation and Animal Psychology. He was the first to note changes in the bird life through migration. He described the method of obtaining ammonia from animal offal by dry distilling. Al-Damari, who died in 1405 in Cairo and who was influenced by Al-Jahiz, is the greatest Arab zoologist, Muslim zoologist. His book Hayat Hawars, which in English we can translate as Life of Animal, is the most important Muslim work in zoology. It's an encyclopedia on animal life containing a mine of information of the subject. It contains the history of animals and preceded Buffon by 700 years. Al-Masudi has given the rudiments of the theory of evolution in his well-known work, Meadows of Gold. Another of his work, Kitab al-Tanbih wal Ishraq, advances his views on evolution, namely from mineral to plant, from plant to animal, and from animal to man. In botany, Spanish Muslims made the greatest contribution, and some of them are known as the greatest botanists of the medieval times. They were keen observers and discovered sexual difference between such plants as palms and hemps. They roamed about on seas, shores, on mountains, and in distant lands in quest of rare botanical herbs. They classified plants into those that grow from seeds, those that grow from cuttings, and those that grow of their own accord, meaning by wild growth. The Spanish Muslims' advances in botany far behind the state in which it has been left by Dioscorides and augmented the herbology of the Greeks by the addition of 2,000 plants. Regular botanical gardens existed in Cordoba, Baghdad, Cairo, and Fez for teaching and experimental purposes. Some of these were the finest in the world. The Cordovan physician Al-Ghafiqi, who died in 1165, was a renowned botanist who collected plants in Spain and Africa and described them most accurately. According to G. Certain, he was the greatest expert of his time on simples. His description of plants was the most precise ever made in Islam. Has given the name of such in Arabic, Latin, and Berber. His outstanding work, Al-Adiviyah Al-Mufrada, dealing with simples, was later appropriated by Ibn Betar. Abu Zikriya Yahya, who flourished at the end of the 12th century in Spain, was author of the most important Islamic treatise on agriculture during the medieval times, entitled Kitab al-Filaha. The book treats more than 585 plants and deals with the cultivation of more than 50 fruit trees. It also discusses the various diseases of the plants and suggests their remedies also. The book presents new observations on properties of soil and different types of manures. Abdullah ibn Ahmad al-Bitar was the greatest botanist and pharmacist of Spain, in fact the greatest of medieval times. He roamed about in search of plants and collected herbs on the Mediterranean littoral from Spain to Syria, described more than 1400 medical drugs and compared them with the records of more than 150 ancient and Arabian authors. The collection of simple drugs composed by him is the outstanding botanical work in Arabic. This book, in fact, is the most important for the whole period, extending from Discordias down to the 16th century. It's an encyclopedic work on the subject. He later entered into services of Ayyubid king Al-Malik as his chief herbalist in Cairo. From there, he traveled through Syria and Asia Minor and died in Damascus. One of his work, Al-Mughani fi al-Adwiya al-Mufarrad, deals with medicine. The other, Al-Jami Ji Al-Adwiya Al-Mufarrad, is the very valuable book containing simple remedies regarding animals, vegetables, and mineral matters, which has been described above. It deals with 200 novel plants which were not known up to the time. Abu Abbas al-Nabati also wandered along the African coast from Spain to Arabia in search of herbs and plants. He discovered some rare plants on Red Sea. Another botanist, Ibn Sori, was accompanied by an artist during his travels in Syria who made sketches of the plants which they found. Ibn Wasiya wrote his celebrated work Al-Filah Al-Nabtiyat, containing valuable information about animals and plants. Many cosmographical encyclopedias have been written by Muslim, Arabs, and Persians, which contain sections on animals, plants, and stones, of which the best known is that of Zakaria al Khiwani, who died in 1283 AD. Al Dinwari wrote an excellent book of plants, and Al Bakri has written a book describing in detail the plants of Andalusia, means Spain. Ibn Maskawi is a contemporary of Al-Biruni, advanced a definite theory about evolution. According to him, plant life at its lowest stage of evolution doesn't need any seed for its birth and growth, nor does it perpetuates its species by means of the seed. The great advancement of botanical science in Spain led to the development of agriculture and horticulture on a grand scale. Horticulture improvements, says G. Sarton, constituted the finest legacy of Islam, and the gardens of Spain proclaim to display one of the noblest virtues of our Muslim conquerors. The development of agriculture was one of the glories of Muslim Spain. Now, transmission to the West. Now, what happened when the research work of Muslims in medieval time, it was transmitted in the West. The Muslims were pioneers of science and arts during medieval times and formed the necessary link between the ancient and the modern. Their light of learning dispelled the gloom that had developed Europe. Muslim science was the main source from which the scientific knowledge of the Muslims and their great achievements were transmitted to France, Germany, and England. The Spanish universities of Córdoba, Sevilla, and Granada were thronged with Christians and Jewish students who learned science from the Muslim scientists and teachers, and who then popularized them in their native land, mean Europe. Another source for the transmission of Muslim scientific knowledge was Sicily, where during the reign of Muslim kings and even afterwards, a large number of scientific works were translated from Arabic into Latin. The most prominent translators who translated Muslim works from Arab into Europe languages were Gerard of Cremona, Adelard of Bath, Roger Bacon, and Robert Chester. Writing in celebrated work Moors in Spain, this Moor is a wrong word. It was given by European to the Muslims in Spain. They divided into somewhere they called it Muhammadan, somewhere they called it Moor, somewhere they called something else. In Spain, Stanley Lane Poole says, for nearly 8 centuries under the Muslim rulers, Spain set out to all Europe a shining example of a civilized and enlightened state. Arts, literature, and science prospered as they prospered nowhere in Europe. Students flocked from France, Germany, and England to drink from the fountains of learning which flowed down in the Muslim cities. The surgeons and doctors of Andalusia, mean Spain, were in the vein of science. Women were encouraged to study, and the lady doctor was not always unknown among the people of Córdoba. Mathematics, astronomy, and botany, history, philosophy, and jurisprudence were to be mastered in Spain and Spain alone. The practical work of the field, the scientific method of irrigations, the arts of fortification, and of the highest and most elaborate products of the loom, The gravel and the hammer, the potter's wheel and masonry's trowel were brought to perfection by the Spanish Muslims. Whatever makes a kingdom great and prosperous, whatever tends to refinement and civilization was found in Muslim Spain. The students flocked to Spain cities from all parts of the Europe to be infused with the light of learning which lit up Spain. Another Western historian writes, the light of these universities shone far behind the Muslims' world and drew students to them from east and west. At Cordova, in particular, where there were a number of Christian students and the influence of Muslim philosophy coming by way of Spain upon universities of Paris, Oxford, and North Italy, and upon Western Europe through generally was very considerable indeed. The book copying industry flourished at Alexandria, Damascus, Cairo, and Baghdad. And about the year 970, there were 27 free schools open in the Cordova for the education of the poor. Such were the great achievements of Muslims in the fields of science, which paved the way for the growth of modern science. So here we end this lecture. See you in the next lecture.